Wells only and his guests are not responsible for any losses you may accrue for having weak hands. Where the haters at? Yeah, bitches still ain't showed up. And now, right, we got Hex, flawless uptime. People thought this was a joke. Now they're mad at the chart. This is Wales only. Glad you guys can make it out. I'm making some claims that are pretty outlandish, but I can back them up. Boom. End of story. There is no other crypto out there, so don't get it twisted. If you don't understand where you're parking your money, you're gonna pay the consequences for that, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. Boom. We're obliterating everybody, literally. There is nobody else that comes close, right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest. Yep. That's it. Yep. That's the secret. The guy well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. These motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. Man, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Y'all's deep. Everybody. My God. Ex-Asians, bro. Everybody. Australians, man. Everybody gets me. Yo, when is it told you? Dollar told you. Everybody done told you. It's crazy. What up, fam? Happy Monday to all. Hold on, guys, because it's Monday, so these people gotta just make noise. Hold on, I think they're not gonna make noise now. All right, lucky us. So shout out to everybody. After getting through their first Monday, if it's that kind of thing for you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let's see, Sante. Shout out to you, brother. Where's Girl? What's going on, bro? Hope you had. I don't know if you went to Vegas or not. I don't think you did. No, I'm pretty sure you did. PC was good, man. Yeah, it's one of them days, man. I think the topic of generational wealth is often ignored in the crypto conversation, and that's just all I talk about. And I think that's probably the difference between me and most people. Terry Doc was good, brother. Mr. Pulsexican was good. No worries, Dominic. Dominic, catch you on the next one, bro. No worries. Yeah, what up? What up, T-Tom? Crypto Felix was good, bro. Shout out to you, Steven. This is interesting because this isn't what's on my mind. This is my mind, if that makes sense. All I think about is how I can perpetually generate income, right, in ways that are unorthodox and not what everybody else is doing. Because that's really how you really find it. What's going on, George? What's going on, Orez? Right? Like, you really want to find the money that nobody's picking up. That's the key, and that's hard. What's going on, bro? Yeah, we're all future wells, and this is kind of like the whole point of this is the premise that underlines everything that I say, right? So you got some Mexicans that already hit their lick, and then you got everybody else. Everybody else is gonna end up in that same bucket. They just got to do their time because that's how the system works. What's going on, Roberto? What's going on, Barnes? Right, like that's what it's about. It's just about understanding you got to do your time. What up, Dougie? Nate Steaks was good, and that's really all it is. Hex Freddy, what's up? H Freeman was good. And once you realize that, then you realize what it is you have to do, right? And ultimately, Bob was good. Facing reality, what up? Almighty Hexagon, what's going on? What's going on, Daniel? Yeah, shout out to them cats. Um, but that's when you got to realize what you have to do, right? And what you have to do is figure out what's the most efficient way for you to continually invest valueless paper into a value providing system, right? Which is what we need to focus on. Because you want to exchange valueless things for value providing things, right? Because once you understand the game that's being played, well, there's only one way to go. What's going on, Journeyman? Oh, damn. Sorry, bro. Sorry. You gotta read that Strong Man book, bro. You gotta get on that because you gotta get on that. Appreciate you, Kawano. Try to stick to that. Very difficult for a lot of people. Almighty Hexagon, shout out to you, man. Shield Fox was good, bro. Thank you, MJ Money. Well, I'll try. Generational wealth is something that a lot of people really try to overlook. You know, they look for that quick buck. There's nothing wrong with that, but you got to understand that there's limits to that quick buck, right? What's going on, first steps, and that's what it's about. What up, Bugs? Um, AZU was good. Yeah, I know I'm pushing a little early today. For you over there in Australia. What's good, yo? What's up? Funk Master Hex. Name kills me every time. um, and we gotta figure out how to stack these chips, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out what's the most optimal strategy to build wealth the quickest, right? That's ultimately what we're all trying to do. And some people think they got to figure it out. Some try to figure it out. Some never figure it out. And some do figure it out. And the few that do understand, like the divergence in points of view, right? And how people view money and what it is and why it is what it is and things like that. Um, and these are kinds of like money's a very psychological thing. After the math, you come to realize it's worth nothing. So thereby, it gotta be just psychological. What's good, see? And that's really what's important to understand about playing this long-term game, because generational wealth is not something that happens, in one trade. Like it's not just one hex. Like you got to do it a few times over. That's the way you secure it, because making it is easy, keeping it is hard. And this is something that all these people that have money now, they're gonna come to realize that because everything is a reason to spend money. And when you got it, it doesn't matter. Well, it goes just as fast as it came, if not faster. Because when you're not producing it, that means that the ledger on the accounts, right? The ledgers in the account, they only tip one way, and that's negative. So there's only one way to remedy that, right? And that's by building cash flow generating situations. And there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And this is kind of the thing that's very easy to dismiss when you're in our seat where we get to pretty much make money off of money, because that's easy, right? That's always optimal. That's always easy, but it's hard to exercise patience, to be a sniper. In short, it's hard. And I believe that, this is my opinion, that I think to build generational wealth, you really have to be some type of sniper, right? Whether you're being extremely patient in your day trading, or you're being extremely patient in the types of investments you elect, or you're being extremely patient in how you allocate your capital into the cryptos, whatever the case is, your real estate, whatever, right? The crux of the story is that you're being patient because you're trying to be selective. You see, and this is the catch. I remember when I first started, trying to learn to trade and all that. You think there's something to do every 5 minutes, but no, that's the complete opposite. This is an interesting question, and I'll come back to my train of thought on what I was just saying. Because I mean, this is kind of the thing, right? We concern ourselves with these short term, and I say short term because we know, based on what happened with Hex, and just based on what we see in the crypto market in general. Hold on, guys. All right. So we know, like, based on what we've seen with Hex, we know what's gonna come. And I mean, never mind that. Just look at the broader market. People are honestly ready to just throw money at crap as long as it's crypto, or they think it is anyway. And that's important to understand because this is what separates millionaires from billionaires, billionaires from trillionaires. Because when we're thinking generational wealth, how does that happen? How does a person secure their family's future permanently, right? And that's a difficult thing to answer because it has no answer. It's a process, you see, and this is what is almost disrespectful to most people in their minds, because when you see questions like this, it's like, you kind of know that they matter, but do they really? And the answer is no, not really. They don't matter at all. And the reason why is because we already have Hex as a base case for how Richard builds, how he engineers his products. And that's important, right? We've already seen it with Steve Jobs. We've already seen it everywhere in technology, how that nexus of a product development really, really matters so much because he's the one guiding everything. He's the maestro, right? So when you know somebody is there saying A, B, C has to happen this way, well, you know it's going to happen that way. And that's one thing we can rest assured that we're going to get with anything that Richard Hart designs or is involved with, right? And I mean, imagine so many people are upset about Pulse Chain, and he could just drop it. He could just release it to a certain extent, right? He could release some crappy ass chain. Everybody else does it, right? Everybody else does that. Everybody else releases a crappy chain. So it's no big deal for him to just do that. It's no big deal for him to do that. You know, he could literally launch it right now. Who cares? He does. That's the answer. And that's why it's not launched. You understand? And this is very important for people to understand because when you're investing in something long term, like this crypto stuff. This crypto stuff should really be long term for you. Doesn't matter if you're well off already or not, because the implications of what's happening right now are profound. So for somebody to say that, that's something you need to confirm for yourself, right? Like I always say, people can say whatever they want, but what are you doing to confirm that what's being said is true or even valid, right? And I've shown you guys all this data over time, just like the size of the regular markets that exist today, legacy finance, versus the size of the crypto market, which is, I think, is maybe a billion plus right now. Hold on, let me pull it up because I don't remember. Yeah, a billion, not even 1.1, 1.02 million, billion. So we're talking about, I'm sorry, trillion. We're talking about 1 trillion versus 100 trillion plus that, as it stands, is in jeopardy of losing all of its value because of what could potentially happen with respect to the unit of account, right? And this is why crypto is so paramount, because we don't know what's going to happen. Um, as far as that goes, like we see all these different things that they're doing, right? Like, they keep talking about the CBDC, and they keep acting like they don't know, right? Or like, what's up with crypto? Now they're talking about banning mining in the U.S. All this nonsense. Like you have all these different factions playing their role, laying down their hand at the table. And the headlines we see crossing, that they reflect that. They reflect all these contradictory positions that don't make sense, right? Because you'll even see positive headlines about crypto. I mean, how is this possible that we see the entire spectrum, right? It almost doesn't make sense. And hold on, guys. All right, people. Sorry about that. Um, so you know, the structure of the product that's being built is really critical for the under the long term perception of what could happen. Right? It's kind of like investing in a solid company, but at first you don't know it's a solid company because it doesn't exist. So you got to rely on something else, and that's usually the people and how they operate. And I'm sorry for being gone for so long, but man, these people are wild with this damn music out here. You guys know how it is. But that's really important, right? Because that's how people that understood that when they were our age and understanding what they were doing and seeing a Steve Jobs in his prime, like we're fortunate to see a Richard Hart in his prime. And anything that he builds, in my mind, if it's anything like Hex, and he's taking the time and being as diligent and vigilant to make it as good as possible, I don't expect any downside as far as design and operation and all that stuff, just because of the time that it's taken. Um, and that's supreme, right? Because this is what made it so easy for me personally to lock it up, lock that hex up for 15 years, right? That's what made it so easy for me to be able to say, hey, I can add value to this thing here called Hex by creating this Hex investment trust for accredited investors, because it puts it in the face of people on legacy side, right? And they can take their fiat and put it in there if they don't want to own their own keys, for example, because that's really all it's for. It's not for anything else. And it gives people exposure to crypto price action in that way, um, because that that is what it's about. Ultimately, is helping people understand they really need to take a serious look at this crypto thing, because there is no other way for people to really get it unless they see it, right? And even for a lot of people, um, the Bitcoins and Ethereums of the world, like that's not gonna do it for them anymore. Even though that's what's promoted and all that, right? Like that's just the status piece. Like that's not doing nothing. Ultimately, as you guys know how people operate, they're gonna be looking for that next best thing. That's just how it goes. You know, Balenciaga was hot. Now it's Sergio Tacchini or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like these things change over time. And these people that set these so-called trends, which is the only way you're gonna really get mass adoption as things stand right now. Like they're gonna be the ones that either magically find it and slip, spill the beans on mistake, or somebody's gonna sanction it. Either or, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Because that's just how it goes down. So as long as it's something like Hex in terms of operational function, sure, we ain't got to worry in the world, like at all. So, that is very critical to understand, because that's what gives people the confidence to stake something for 15 years when it comes to Hex. The fact that it just runs like that, I mean, that's hard to come by, and it's almost impossible to understand because it's abnormal, right? So this is why it's crucial to understand these things to their base layer, because we're innovators in a lot of senses of the word, right? We're engaging things that most people won't even, don't even understand. Never mind crypto. Just the term crypto is foreign to most people. We're talking about something inside of crypto itself that is foreign to people in crypto. Give me a second, guys. And that's really critical to understand because, there's alpha and then there's alpha, right? Um, and real alpha is understanding or comprehending, excuse me, exactly where you're standing, right? Because that's how you determine your next move. And this is exactly why I want to do a stream on this, because it's very true. You know, when you see a lot of people talking, what do they talk about mostly? They talk about these short term isms. You know what I mean? Like if we're here playing this long game and we're talking about generational wealth and all that. What up, bro? Yeah, it is crazy, isn't it? Learn about reality. it's and the thing about it is there's only so much you can say without getting banned. You know what I mean? So I can't say certain things and all of that. But I guess I should point you guys to this book. It'll put y'all up on game as to how things are actually working and operating, and how jacked up things are from where they should have been, right? Of course, brother. Everybody, right? So this is what's difficult, right? And this is why even within our space, we stand out. We're doing stuff that nobody even comprehends. Like average person doesn't know what crypto is. They have no concept of why it exists. They don't even understand money. They don't understand that the thing they earn income in is trash, is valueless. So of course, the closer you are to somebody, the less they're gonna respect your view on something so critical because they know you. And you ain't no millionaire, billionaire, nothing like that. So they're not gonna take you seriously until you really show them that you do know with some result. Because that's how most people are. They want to see some material thing, even if you're not materialistic. So that's one of those things that, man, when people learn, they're gonna learn the hard way. And that's just the nature of the beast. They learn it now with the way cost of living is going up. That's for sure. See? So, yep. Tell me about it, bro. Tell me about it. Because that's the nature of the game, right? When you're making that fast money, it come easy, but it go just as easy, and that's it, right? And this is something that, how do you get to a point where you don't even got to think about money? It's very hard for it to be one trade. And typically, in order to secure that position, you want to put yourself at the mercy of repeating the same boring old process time and time again. That's really the best way to go about it. Because if you think about it, look at the greats. What do? They're not out here betting on freaking lava pools and all this, craziness. Like they're betting on what they think is a short thing because they understand the merit in their investment. And that's something that's very, it sounds like a big word salad, but it's very simple. They invest in things they comprehend, and they really never deviated until like 2011, and then ever since then it just hasn't been going well for them, in a lot of senses. But um, you know, history has shown us that boring is the key to success when it comes to investing and generating wealth in that fashion. Like think about Carnegie Mellon. Like, how did that guy, Andrew Carnegie, and I said Carnegie Mellon, sorry. Andrew Carnegie, I was thinking of the school. How did he make all those billions, right? Because he figured out a process where once he set it up one time, all he had to do was adjust every time after, because all he was doing was replicating, taking a raw input, extracting some value from it in the form of a, hold on, guys, right? Oh wow, I was muted. How about that? Great, great. Yeah, somebody DM me on Telegram, so thank you for whoever that was. I've been going in. Damn, this is bad. So let me go back to question I answered before. Damn, this is crap. I hate that I just blanked for the past 5 minutes, but it's cool. We'll pick it up. So let me just go back on this, but just to talk about post chain and what blockchain Buck was saying. Let me see if I can find a comment. Yeah. So what I was saying is, you gotta remember that Hex took at least like 18 months to materialize, and we've only had like a year for Hex. So if we're gonna compare, we're kind of still good, kind of still on track, so to speak. So it's just about understanding that, do we want a Solana or do we want a Pulse chain? And I think most people are gonna go with, we want a Pulse chain. So that's the tough thing. I mean, what makes this even harder is that we're not directly involved with the process. We don't know what the timeline look like. We don't exactly know anything. So it makes it even more frustrating, So it's just one of those things. um so I was a real fan of the Maximus product. I'm lukewarm about the rest because they just kind of rehashing what already exists in a lot of ways, and I'm not sure that creating all those, because so what are these coins, you know what I mean? People think the derivatives, and they're kind of derivatives, but they're a sort of derivative, not a true derivative. They're a claim, a receipt claim, right? They're like a claim receipt. They're like the money in your pocket, except for that the money in your pocket is based on nothing. Whereas the set of the Maximus DAO coins, those are based on Hex. So all that Hex that's submitted to these bags to mint these coins, those coins are a claim on Hex on X date. They're not a derivative because they only represent the value that that backing, that underlying asset, which is Hex in this case, is representing mathematically, right? Because the intention is that, of course, these coins do last because they're a form of currency now, but they're backed by Hex, right? So while they are a derivative of sorts, they're really just a claim receipt. So they're not a derivative in the sense that they get their value based on Hex. They get their value because they are a claim on Hex. So it's like a one-to-one relation based on the staking value and then the perceived premium that the market gives it, right? Because Maxi is a 2x premium, and that means that if you're buying that because you don't want to stake your Hex, then you got to give up double the Hex to get that. So that's the downside. But the upside is all you got to do is wait, till the premium gets high enough so that you actually get that back if you're buying it outright instead of minting it at the minting phase, right? So the idea is that you mint during the mint phase and you benefit from having liquid Hex in essence, right? Because these coins then represent a claim on Hex at X date in the future. So, if you don't do them now, then these coins in essence kind of become competition for Hex, which I don't really think is great, but it is what it is because that's what makes a market. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of people don't like being staked. They don't. They don't like it. This is why you got all these millions of coins just flopping over into this protocol, and we're not seeing the price of Hex jump up because 70 million coins is a lot of coins, people. And that was the last time I seen that number. And as we all know, Maximus Dow, that Maxi contract, that bad boy locked in 294 million. But at that time, we did see some buying. So this is just people deciding that they want some short-term liquidity, right? And by liquidity, I mean having a yield-producing instrument that is not necessarily producing yield itself, in the sense that these coins, right, like the set of the perpetuals, they don't produce a yield themselves, but the underlying asset, which they're a claim on, do. So that's the way you got to look at it, because that's what it is. They serve their purpose because people don't want to be staked. That's just what the market says, and that's just what it is. So, people got to learn how to handle these coins now. It's another level of education, because you got to understand premium, you got to understand discount, you got to understand that if you're not minting these coins during mint phase, then you're overpaying. So, that means you got to hold on for as long as you need to. And that's pretty important to understand, you know. I hope that makes sense. I hope that answers your question somewhat. Attack these coins during mint phase, because if not, otherwise you're gonna overpay. You're gonna be charged a premium relative to what you could have gotten during mint phase, and that's just a function of the market and the expectation on what the future is gonna be, right? Because people know, they know Hex works 1,000% of the time, and this is one of those things that I try to tell people at the beginning, when we were first learning about Hex. Like, this level of consistency, you don't find this anywhere. There's a premium to be paid for that, and the market is going to educate all of you guys and gals that don't really get what that means. And Maxi is the first iteration of that education. And if you look at the team coin, that already has a premium on it. So you got to ask yourself, why is the market doing that if it doesn't make mathematical sense? Because the math isn't there to back it. You can see it on their dashboard. So it's not even an opinionated statement. It's there, right? You got to ask yourself why to then understand that, right? Because that means you got to hold on. And that's all. There's nothing wrong with that, because you got liquid yield being produced, really. And it's just a matter of how the market perceives that fact over time. And as we've seen it perceives it pretty freaking well. So this is just the start, right? What do you think is going to happen over time? I mean, I personally think Maxi and the perpetuals are just going to prove the validity or the strength that is Hex. Like, they're just going to lend it to Hex, because I mean, for Maxi to be 2x the value of Hex, that's pretty crazy. Consistently, consistently, that's pretty crazy. So, you know, that's a testament to the work them guys did, in conjunction with a testament to what Hex is as a product, on what Richard and Kyle and all those guys that worked on Hex did, right? It's a compounding effect. And this is something we got to understand, right? Things like Hedron, Maxi, Desi, all these things, they're just compounding the power of Hex. And they're just lending further validity to that fact that Hex is that thing. That's what everybody is ultimately going to want to, hitch their wagon to. Because why wouldn't you? And shout out to you, Biffness. Greatness happening here at not other places at the same time. Nuts. Yeah. Think about that. And that's because you're deciding to put in that work. It's so easy to do nothing. It's hard to do something. Thanks for my work today and back in the day with the Quant Gang. You're the reason. Oh, appreciate you, brother. Really can't think. I appreciate you, man. I don't know about that POTUS business, but I appreciate you. I just try to provide objectionable information, man, objective information, and it's difficult to do because there's a lot of reasons. And as you guys remember, when Hex was running up, it didn't make sense. And we all got carried away with the FOMO, right? Because I wasn't looking at the data that I then found thereafter that helped me see, wow, the top was in my face. And I was too busy not looking, and that's something, I talk about it all the time, learning from your mistakes, right? And there's always something new to learn because we don't know everything. No matter what we might think, we don't know everything. And this is why you got to stick to definitions and all this and all these basics, right? That a lot of people consider trivial. They're not. They're there for a reason. I mean, I'm able to educate everyone on a lot of things because I took that simple fact to heart. When I was listening to guys that were educating me on the come up, you know, they were the professionals that had been doing it for however long, not me. So I had to shut up and listen. And that's why now I can talk how I talk and educate people and with ease, right? Because I make these concepts as simple as possible, right? If you're lacking on basic financial education, then you just got to Google a couple of definitions. It's not hard. It's really not. You just got to want to learn it. And that's what's hard. It's hard to want to put in the time to want to expand your horizon, so to speak, right? Because crypto isn't really like finance, but you got to know how to relate the two, especially when you don't know anything. Um, and that's what it's about. How do you tame all this information that you've never come across before, right? Like, when we sit here and think about what life teaches us, even making money is easy. There's nothing complicated to that with that. The hard thing is honestly to keep it. What do you do after you get $100 million? Go buy a plane, go buy a house, go buy the biggest plot of land you can find. Like, what do you do? I mean, the right answer is you figure it out. And it's none of those things that I mentioned, because if you're lucky enough to come up on that kind of money, well, you need to figure out how to make it grow even further, right? And this is what it's honestly about, you know. Yeah, we got a lot of people just waiting to dump, a lot of entities, addresses just waiting to dump. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as they exit accordingly, right? But it's just one of those things that is hard to grasp at the beginning, you know. What up, Chris? We're here trying to make millions and gazillions and gajillions and all that, and we want it to happen now, but it's not gonna happen right now. Like right now, we're gonna keep going sideways until something trips the market. That's honestly it. Something has to set the market off to get the buyers buying and the sellers not selling. That's the equation. Um, and that's really all you can do. Yeah, I was going in, man. Sorry that I missed you guys earlier. But you know, um, how do you get to that point where you're not just making a good decision one time? And that's what generational wealth is all about, right? Doing the same thing over and over is very difficult. It's easy to want to just jump out, do backflips, and think you got it figured out, because this is what we all do when we're coming up. We think we got it all figured out, especially if we don't got anybody to guide us. You know, the less guidance we had coming up, fuck, you couldn't tell. The less you could be told, right? And this is a problem that most young men run into, uh, commonly from my experience, anyway. Um, and people learn by getting their noggin dinged, you know, taking their licks and their losses and all that. Um, you know, it's easy, but when you don't have a plan, it's hard, right? And that's ultimately what the answer is of how generational wealth. But how do you get to that point where you have this plan laid out? You have to learn various things, right? You got to understand why you're doing certain things, right? Like for a period of time, we were all talking about these trusts, these charitable remainder trusts, and what was their purpose, and all this and all that. You know, and it got to a point where a lot of people really thought that that was the only thing you were supposed to have, and it's like, no, man, that's literally just one piece in the mosaic that paints the picture, right? And that is the type of stuff that people need to learn at this stage, because they don't have the six, seven, eight, nine figures yet. You know, at this point in time is when you need to be putting in the work to understand the things you need to be doing once you get the money. Because if you don't, you're going to make a savage mistake. Because this is what happens to all of us that come into contact with money and have no plan, and then just lose it all. Because that's just the unfortunate reality of the karmic situation with money, right? Why do you think people give, right? Why do you think people pay themselves first, and all of these little habits that these people that espouse this type of education of how to become wealthy over multiple generations, right? Like they're not afraid to say no, they're not afraid to get dirty, they're not afraid to figure it out, they're not afraid to put in work. And I mean, putting in work has so many different meanings, right? So many different meanings. Um and that's kind of one of those things that is, how do you figure that out? Where's your vantage point? And for a lot of people, that vantage point has to be, and this is, in my opinion, something that's a must. You have to know why. What is your driver? What is your motivator? Because only then can you really try to ascertain some type of idea of what it is you should be considering in terms of what your plan should be, right? So, like, for example, if you made that nice X money and you retired and all of that, you probably want some cash flow generating deals in the fiat side of things, because now you got the money, right? Yeah, I was going in. um, so how do you get to that point? You know, I remember not understanding a damn thing about money at all, and just clicking away, clicking away, clicking away, chasing it, chasing it, chasing it, chasing it. Because the hardest thing for a lot of people to realize is that nobody's going to teach you what to do. Nobody. Nobody's going to tell you how to get rich. Very few people have any interest in providing that kind of information. Um, how do you figure out what makes sense for you when you don't have a clue, right? I mean, it sounds impossible. And this is exactly why you got to have an understanding of why you're motivated to do something, right? Because if we're approaching crypto, we're approaching investments, we're approaching whatever have you with our monetary value, I'm pretty confident that nobody is doing it to lose money. Just a wild guess, but pretty confident that's true. Um, I mean, if you're one of those fortunate souls that's investing here to, for a tax write-off, man, shout out to you. Let me know what you know. But mostly everybody else is trying to make gains over here, right? Um, it's gonna be crazy, right? Once you get to that point where you have all those commas and all the zeros, because it's gonna happen if you do the right thing. And we all know what the right thing is. There's even a song for it, right? I mean, there's even a song for it. So, you know, all we honestly have to do, um, all we honestly have to do is exercise patience, and exercise patience in a way where you're always looking to repeat that same process that helped you find hex or helped you find whatever big bang you found, right? And once you figure that out, you can't lose, because that's what it's all about. It's about finding that repeatable process that allows you to generate that value. And that's all it is. It's not about anything else. Uh, you know, it's difficult otherwise. Callum, I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you, brother. I will get back to you on Telegram. It's just wellsonly.com forward slash. It's actually on the site or on the scrolling ticker. I didn't even realize that. So you can just go there if you want. That's how you join the Telegram group. And yeah, that's it. But yeah, but how do you find that clarity, right? How do you find that answer to what it is that motivates you? Why are you doing what you're doing? You got to really just look around you and ensure that it makes sense. Your why. That's number one, because you don't ever want that battery to, like, when you're chasing a goal, you don't want that battery to get, shut down or um, just unplugged or lose charge or whatever the case is. You really want that battery to consistently power you, right? Um, oh yeah, we had all right. So I actually talked about this in depth with the first one. Let me even make sure that I even got that first one right, because for some reason I was thinking it was closer than it seemed to be in my mind. I thought it was like last quarter, but apparently it was like around day 500 something. So I'm about to see exactly when that was, but we had a 745 hex jump, which equated to approximately $30, right? Which doesn't sound like a lot, it doesn't. But once hex does a 10x, that $30 becomes 200. Boom, in an instant. And once hex goes back to 50 cent, that 745 hex times 50 cent, that becomes 350, bones, whatever the case is, all in one shot. And this is per T-share, right? And of course, you divide it by 3 if you go out to the max duration of 5,555 days. But, how do you get there, right? And, those those T shares, when they exit the system, and they've been in for almost as long as that stake has, when that stake is almost as old as the system state is for Hex, hard for that T share rate not to jump up like crazy. It's almost impossible for that not to happen, right? And that's what we saw. And this is just the second big jump in the T share rate. This isn't the first. This is the second. So unfortunately, um, you know, value continues to chug along, right? And this is the premise of generational wealth. Um, you consistently add to your asset side of the balance sheet, because that's the thing that produces cash flow. That's the thing that produces value to you, right? Now, when you sit here and think about what most people do, they add to the liability side of the balance sheet more often than not. Now, how do they do it? Well, they do it with experiences and all this and all that. Like, people find every excuse in the book to spend money sometimes, instead of thinking about how to save an extra dollar or whatever the hell the case is that they need, right? Just exercising that patience. A lot of people don't have that ability. Um, let's see, Icosa. A lot of people sleeping on it, right? Liquid B shares now in bootstrapping phase with high inflation and the ARB ceiling X price. Deflationary with the T share ratcheting up. Yeah, a lot of people slept on Hedron and Icosa at the beginning, or Hedron at the beginning. People are still sleeping on Icosa. Not as bad as they were on Hedron, because Icosa adds a ton of value immediately, right, to the system. Because what was hard for people to see was the value that Hedron brought to the system from the start. They were really just going off of basic stuff. They weren't really trying to understand what was happening in the system or whatever. Um, and that's what led so many astray at the start. Um, because everybody wants, a big bang, right? Like nobody wants to. Okay, yeah. So I was going crazy. Yeah, that was last quarter, that last 750 hex jump. So it was around day 900, and it's about day 1,000. So that was 100 days ago or so, a little over 100 days ago. So that first 750 hex T share rate jump, right? And here we got 100 days later another one. I hypothesize that we're probably going to see one every quarter, at least, or I mean, maybe at least one every 100 days or so. We'll see how this continues to develop over time. I mean, 1,100 days is the next marker. 900 days was the last one. 1,000, right around 1,000, we got another one. So we'll see if it's like a every quarter affair or something like that. I mean, it's wild, man. It's wild because right now these hex are only worth 4 cents per. At one point they were worth 50 cents per. And this is the thing that's very important for people to realize. These things don't stay, in this specific point of value. Like they change over time. And that's really what it's all about at the end of the day. We want to understand that these things are here for a good reason, right? They're not just there because they're there. Like, oh yeah, we just threw it there because we thought it made sense. Like this T-shirt rate jump is there for a reason, and this is the first one. And as you guys can see, it was around day 900 or so, and we're about at day 1,010 or something like that. So we could be seeing the start of something where it was just 200 plus hex jumps, right? Now we're jumping in I mean, we went to, I think, close to 300 once, but then we just skipped straight to 750, seven something, straight to it 2 times now. So, are we going to continuously see those types of jumps? I have no idea. But there's a case to be made for that. Um, oh damn, I don't have that chart here. I have another chart showing. I don't know why it's not here though. Huh. I gotta update these charts anyway. It's been a damn month. Um, so this is what it looks like on the actual chart. Let's go to HEX.FIRE.io. Check out my man Crispy site because he got all the goods on this. That guy's always been diligently tracking stakes and just all this nuanced information for a long time. Um, so I'm actually gonna, damn, I'm pretty sure I got a Substack talking about that. Let me see something. Did I write something on that or not? So how does the T-share rate change? Long story short, every time somebody ends a stake, the system calculates how much they should get on the restake. And if that calculation takes us, hold on, guys, let me just black out this screen because it just takes a long time to load. Because there's a lot of data, as you guys know. What the hell was I saying? Yes, T-share rate. So once that T-share rate is calculated and the system determines what the number is, it's going to check and see exactly whether it should change the rate or not. If the rate is different, and by different, I mean strictly higher, then the T-share rate will change because the T-share rate only goes up. It was coded that way. It cannot go down. So anytime it changes, it's only going to change upward because that's by design. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Anytime a T-share a stake ends, the system calculates what the next T-share rate should be for that stake, and if it's greater than the current T-share rate, then it changes to whatever that T-share rate is. So it could be 1,000 hex, it could be 20,000 hex. We don't ever know what it's going to be. We just know that at some point in the future is going to change. And as hold on, because now I can add the chart back. If you can see, damn, does this have this is home. Hold on, guys. This is fun. Yeah, this is cool. As you guys can see here, the forecast T-shirt rate, we're gonna see a lot more jumps, right? But we could actually end up being close to 26,000 at the end of the year, and this is after starting at 20,000, the beginning of 2020. So that's a 30% jump or something like that in 1 year again. So this is literally keeping in line. Let me think. 200. Yeah, that's the same thing. Yeah, 30%. So if you look at the rates of change we had in the T-share rate from year 1 to year 2, we went from 10,000 to like 18,000, right? And this is just looking at it recently, like a year ago. Somebody actually put the stat up on Twitter. This is why I know these numbers. So now we're at 24,000. A year ago, we were at 18,000. This is a 30% increase. The year before that, it was from 10,000 to 18,000. That was an 80% increase, but that was during launch phase. So if we're looking at this on a calendar basis now, sorry, we can see here we were at 20,000 beginning of the year. And if we finish anywhere near where we started a year ago, relative to a 30% value, we're going to be right near this point. So that means from here to then, the end of the year, we could see another 2,000 hex being required just to get a single T-share. So I gave you how the T-share rate changes, and I also went a little bit further as to show how the system works on an annual basis, right? It could very well be that that 30% I'm calculating is actually 36.9, but since I'm not being precise, we're not seeing that, right? So that's what's actually happening with the system. I mean, it's calibrating the rate of change time over time, year over year, like it always does. Right now, let's see what the change is. This is like 32. This is supposed to be 32K to 26, which is six. That's probably another 30% if my math is correct. Six divided by 26. Let's see. Yep, 23%. So, you know, is this the beginning of the slowdown of the S curve? Is this forecast not taking into account uh stakes that are ending that they can't see? Like, we don't know yet, but one thing's for sure, two things for certain. Better believe that if you're stake, you're gonna be getting comped the whole time, right? And that's what's crucial. This is why things like Maxi and the perpetuals work. This is why everything that's built on Hex, Hedron, Icosa, all these things work, because we know for sure this thing here is going to consistently do what it's coded to do. I mean, it's one of the most wild things we've ever seen be made, right? Day 9/11. Thank you, Your Excellence. So there you go. Those are the specific numbers. 755 hex jump the first time, day 9/11, and yesterday it was 745, day 1014 or something like that. So, the system is designed to maintain value, right? And this is why understanding how to play the long game is key. And that's what, you know, wrapping your head around building generational wealth is all about. Playing, taking those opportunistic shots, like buying a Hedron for those T-shares that are going to come up on auction. And now everybody's figured it out, right? But for a long time, people had no clue what the purpose of Hedron was. So if you were hip the game all the way back then, you've been buying Hedron this whole time and you're ready to tackle these T-shares. Boom, right? So it's critical to understand, because here's the funny thing. If you understand Hedron, you also understand it's made to be sold. And I used to say this all the time at the beginning, because it is. But people didn't, they don't get it, right? They didn't get the other aspect of Hedron. And that's that this is how you acquire T-shares for the cheap, because you're buying it now for the future. And I was talking about this this morning in Wake Up, or not Wake Up, Hex Asians. And I was like, yo, like, just look at the math, right? And we were looking at a 50 T-share stake, right? Now let's do this math, because I just really want you guys to understand the importance of long-term vision, right? And sticking to understanding the basics. And thank you again for the super chat. If people think, Alan, thank you for the super chat, Alan. I didn't even say your name, bro. If people think Hedron, Icosa, Hex are too expensive now, they will learn come the next bull run that they had it good right now. Get your ducks in a row. That's right. I think it's more than 30,000 T-shares, actually. I think that number went up, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I might be thinking of something else. But let's see. We want to get 50 T-shares, right? Mm, let's just see what this gives us. 24 million hex. So let's divide that by 3. Go with 350. All right, close enough. Let's go to 410. All right, let's split the difference because I'm neurotic like that. There we go. Good enough. So 50 T shares right now cost you 16 G's. Now, this is some major alpha you guys are about to get, so please pay attention. Hedron costs $3.85 per million. What am I doing here? So if we're trying to get 50 T shares was like 370 million starting bid for Hedron at this present price. That's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 386. So here it costs you 16,000. So there's a $200 premium on buying Hex or buying those 50 T shares outright in the market right now versus what it could be daily auction. The odds of you getting it for that price, of course, are slim to none, assuming nobody else is looking or everybody else is ignoring that it exists, right? Which is probably impossible. 16,000 was it 14? Oh my God, I was wrong as hell. Hold on. So the delta. All right, so 370 million Hedron. I wasn't even paying attention to what the hell I was doing. I'm sorry, guys. So let me go back. 370 million Hedron only cost you 1428. That's 10x less. 10x less than buying 50 T shares outright. Now, this is the starting bid. Okay. So that means that somebody can end up paying almost 4 billion hex or Hedron for this stake to get it to equivalent value. Something to think about because this is the imbalance that exists in that market. We're talking about 16,250, $240.50 in terms of price differential, right? And mind you, this is for a 15-year stake, okay? 50 T shares. So we're left with $14,812 of delta. %90, right? And this is the power of Hedron. This is the power of understanding why you got to think long term, strictly. Seriously. I mean, this is a 30% move in acquisition of yield. I'm sorry, 60% move in the acquisition of yield and a unit of yield, right? For every unit of yield, it's costing you 60% more hex to get it over time. Here we're already at what's 24. I'm retarded right now. I'm sorry, guys. 10%. right? We're about 10% up already relative to where we started the year, right? And we're on track to be up 30%, or we're up 20%. We're on track to be up 30%. Sorry, right? So, acquiring that unit of yield is what everybody's trying to do, right? And it's on you to find all the ways. Hold on, guys. Thank you for the super sticker, Steve. So I hope what I'm saying is making sense, right? Like, you got to think forward. You can't think what's in front of you. You got to be patient. You got to be, you know, persistent more than anything else, because that persistency is what helped me understand what I needed to do, right? And what we needed to do was be patient, understand that Hedron was a finished product, understand what the product did, and maybe have bought that 300 million, 400 million Hedron at the dip, at the low, because at that low, what was the cost? Well, it was 17 cents per million. So if you need to buy 400 million, yeah, I'm missing a zero. So 72 bucks is what that 400 million was. Now that 72 bucks is 1400, and that's on a pullback. So that's the advantage of understanding what Hedron could do, right? So it's not even about Icosa and Watsa and all that. It's about those T-shares at the end of the day, right? It's a good question. I say, if you have other avenues to generate cash flow, then you stake Hex. If you don't, then you create those avenues that allow you to get Hex to stake. That's how I would approach it anyway. Um, yeah, that's also another one. If you can swing both, if you don't have to pick, right? It's the best way to go. So yeah, right. But this is the power and understanding the long game, right? Thanks for the super chat, bro. Hope you're doing well, man. Uh, 90% delta right now. This is what 50 T-shares cost you. When Hedron goes live with that auction for those 50 T-shares and whatever other T-shares they are in that system, you see that delta exists already. All you have to do is do the math, and it's right there, right? So understanding all these little things about Hex is what gives us the ability to be able to stick to our investment thesis, right? Because ultimately, that thesis is proved day in, day out, because it's immutable, right? And that immutability is something that we take seriously. Um, and, how could some guy that's not generationally wealthy talk about creating generational wealth? Well, it's very simple. When you consistently know how to lose, then you definitely know how to win, right? It's like touching the fire on the stove. Once you do it, you know not to do that. You know, very simple, right? So if you understand something is immutable, it can't be changed, things can only be built on top of it, etc., etc. You treat that thing accordingly. Um, and this is why Hadron was so important. It really helped those that were paying attention position themselves for that proper move, right? And that proper move is always getting more T-shares because that's what Hedron was always all about. Um, I mean, this T-share rate is a determinant for Hedron, right? The higher it goes, the harder it is to obtain borrowable Hedron or whatever you want to call it, because that's the name of the game. Less T-shares means less Hedron for you. The higher the T-share rate, the harder it is to buy ICOSA. The higher the dollar cost of Hex, the harder it is to buy ICOSA. I mean, these are just nuanced facts of how these systems operate and function, right? So, you know, again, where do I come off talking about generational wealth? Well, the consistency that we are able to bank on is exactly why we can sit here and talk about, hey, all you got to do is put aside $200, $300, $100, whatever you can put aside to dollar cost average in over time. Before you know it, your position will be six figures worth of Hex or whatever the case is that you're aiming for or more. Because what you got to realize is that building wealth, generational wealth, it never stops. It's a process. It's a never ending process, and you teach that to your kids, right? I mean, you keep the process going because there is no other way to generate more dollars with dollars. The easiest way to do that is by using a fixed asset, and that is crypto nowadays. We can't even rely on precious metals because that market has been co-opted, right? And this is what a lot of people in legacy finance don't even realize. These guys are still out here talking about gold bugs and all this nonsense. And I mean, it just reminds me of the Richard Hart versus Peter Schiff debate. The guy, Peter Schiff, quit before it even started. It like he literally forfeited before, like it was a pointless debate. They didn't even talk about what the debate was about because he knew he couldn't. He knew he couldn't. Like that's important to understand if you're new to this game. Why is it that the one guy that professes silver, gold, precious metals, once he came to debate Richard Hart, he immediately threw in the towel? Immediately. No questions asked. This literally happened in the first minute. Literally. Think about that. That's insane. And that's what happened in real time. I could not believe my ears. I really thought he was at least going to try to debate, but no, he didn't even bother. So it was just, I don't even, hold on, guys. All right, I think they're far enough. Um, yeah, it's about being able to be consistent, planning around as much consistency as you can. I actually got a shout out Dip Catcher on his efforts because that's what's primarily driving him and what he's doing. behind the DAOs and the staking pools is trying to give people an avenue where they can actually stake their hex, still earn their yield, and it not be a sunk cost to each individual staker. Because that's ultimately what it would be otherwise. And since it's not, that means it's a shared cost, right? That gets handled just like the good accounting function where anybody could just end that gargantuan stake, right? But even though it's a big stake, it's only one cost, right? So it's not gonna break the bank, so to speak. And whoever can afford it, well, they're not gonna care. They're just gonna do it, and that'll be that. Um, so that consistency that we can bank on, this is what allows us the ability. I mean, and Bitfinesse is really the person that comes to mind when I think about this, even though I'm doing the same thing. Um, what are we trying to do? We're trying to build this house, so to speak, right? And when you build that house, you got to have a foundation laid, and that requires you putting down many bricks, many blocks, many whatever to ensure that that ground is rock solid. And this is what dollar cost averaging is all about. Like right now, so I've been telling you guys for months, right now is the time to be partying, being happy about being able to buy this cheap old hex on a 95% dip because you know what's coming after that. Because this is a repetitive cycle, it doesn't stop. Human beings will always do what human beings do, they won't do anything else ever. And that's just ultimately what it is. But this is the importance of understanding the network effect and the part that it plays in markets. Because that's how you can really get around all the other knowledge you don't have about markets. Literally, that's how you get around it, by understanding the network effect. That's the hack. Because once you understand that, you realize that if you're new and this is new and this is the ground floor and others will, and you can ascertain that others will be attracted to this product, this thing called hex or whatever else, then you're good. You need to invest, take advantage of the lack of notoriety, because once people become familiar, it's too late. Too late. And ultimately we're not trying to do that. We're trying to be the people that are experiencing that big run up. We don't actually want to be like, oh crap, I should have bought at the low when it was 4 cents. Like, nah, man, you should be doing that. You shouldn't be lamenting what you didn't do. And this is the main reason why I stream, right? To help people understand what they should be doing. And this is why staking was so critical on that run up. Anytime I said buy, 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 yo, I was throwing stake that bad boy 5, 5, 5, 5 right after that. Because to me, it didn't make sense any other way. Because you were locking that in, and that's all it's about, locking in that T-share rate. Because that T-share rate is gonna comp your time, regardless of the price. And that's the hardest thing for the individual that isn't thinking long term to wrap their head around. Because again, we all want the big bag, but we have to put in the time. All these hexagons, they put in 2 years plus to experience what you're seeing on Twitter. It didn't just happen, right? I mean, it's very important. And we're running up on 3 years now, guys. So these guys are putting a ton of time into the system. A lot of us are just showing up right now. And that's not the way it works. You got to put in your time. I've been around for about 2 years now. almost in the system. In November, it'll be 2 years for me. So that's a function of understanding how the game works. Now, if you look at all these other markets, right, and I've gone over this kind of stuff before. Um, let's get rid of this. Let's go 21 days. And let's get rid of these. Because I just want you guys to look at just regular chart structure, right? Let's look at Macy's. 1993. Now, this is a retail business, right? Retail is cyclical, meaning you're going to have ups and downs, right? You got the Christmas season, you got the summer season, you got the spring, you got the fall, right? They have to create these reasons for you to go buy stuff, right? This is one of the reasons why quality is down and all this good stuff. Now, let's look at something. Uh, Macy's appliance maker. Does Whirlpool public still? I can't remember. Yep. Let's see. So these guys been public since 1968. All time low 550. All time high 257, and it happened the other day. Right now, this isn't the type of chart that inspires confidence because these guys just make what's the word? Durable goods, right? They make stuff like your washing machine, oven, stove, refrigerator, all that kind of stuff, right? Those durable goods. Um, and people either can buy them or they can't. Like, there's not much more to it. The company's either properly ran or it's not. They either efficiently run or they're not, and the market's going to reflect that. You know, and this is what we're seeing. 5 to 250 is what? Um, 25x or something like that. So it's not anything even great in 50 years or whatever, right? So what happens? Well, you look at is AOL even public? Probably not. Didn't think so. No, they got bought up by Time Warner. What am I even thinking? Google. Right? This is what people want to see in their portfolio, right? Oh, this isn't even the right one. This is Class C. Hold on. Forgot they put that stupid L. There we go. So this is what people ultimately want to see, right? They don't want to see, you know, what I showed you previous in the past two pictures, right? People want to see this. But, you know, how do you ensure that you fully benefit from this run up? That's the question. And the answer is by exercising patience, understanding where you're at in the grand scheme of things. And that's a little harder than it sounds, right? Because look at all the stuff that's happening now. All this stuff is foreign to most people. They don't have a clue what to do with it. So they got to rely on other people to kind of like tell them what it is, what to do, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just not cut and dry. But when you look at a chart like this, right, it seems like it is. But it's not when you're living it, right? And that's what's hard to appreciate and respect about all of this stuff. Apple is another one. All time low 5 cents and 82. This is, I think, before Steve Jobs came back. I forgot when he left. Might have been like early 90s or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Maybe he came back after in early 2000s. I can't really remember anymore. Um, Maybe he left here and came back here. I can't remember the stories anymore. The point is, as you guys can see, 27 cent was that number for a while, right? So if you were lucky enough to pick up Apple under a buck, right? And this is of course split adjusted because this chart is the stock has been split many times. It took them a long time before they even split it the first time. Um, so people that invested in this stock going back, like they're well taken care of. So if you look at what do these people do? The average person that understood what Apple was doing, they just kept buying. And there's plenty of people out here that are on record, like their book is public, all this stuff that's what they did. They just bought Apple over and over and over and over. From the 90s on up, 80s on, like there's plenty of people out here like that because they understood that long-term game. And Amazon is one of those stocks that comes to mind when I think about that because it looks damn near just like Google, right? Took off, um, stock, uh, the bubble popped it, the tech bubble hit them just like it hit every other company. This is Amazon. Google came out, went public after that. So they just suffered their fate relative to 2005, 6, 7, like everybody else did, their first big downfall. But in terms of the stock price, not the company. But Amazon, they've been around longer, right? They have been around since 96, 97 or so. They went public 97. So, these guys weren't making money up until like 2018. Like this company just started, like, accounting wise, they just started making money like the other day for as old as they are, right? And for a long time, a lot of people tried to short this stock because they didn't understand the long term view of everybody else. So I've given you guys a couple scenarios that are classic, right? Classic in the sense that the story doesn't make sense to some, but it does to others, right? And everybody else overpowers the few that don't want to do the work. It's always going to be the way that it works. And this is why it's important to understand dollar cost averaging. This is why it's important to understand the long term gain. Because, as a working individual that has responsibilities and doesn't have just thousands of disposable income just readily available to distribute and deploy into investments, that means you got to pace yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Um, and this is very important to remember because, the hardest thing for us is to be patient, especially men, because, men want the flash, the dash, all that, excuse me, and they want it now. You know, the thing about men is that girls are the drivers, right? But in reality, men want it just as bad. Women are just the potential reward for being in that category of persons with plenty of resources. But that can't be the why. For some people, it is, and they are able to pull it off. But you know, be understanding of the fact that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And once you can wrap your head around that, how generational wealth becomes very, very easy. So you need to understand your why in order to perpetuate your plan to understand how you can find that shortcut. Because what we do as individuals is that we try to perpetuate this false reality that we know better than just playing it smart. And by smart, I mean playing the long game, right? We try to do the fast money things. And there's nothing wrong with speculating. It just shouldn't be the majority of your bag, number one. So, step one is understanding the importance of time and speculation. Step two is understanding that you shouldn't speculate with the majority of your bag. Step three is understanding that if you're not preserving your capital, you have to find new capital to inject. And this is why, for the average, amazing investor, rule number one is don't lose money. And rule number two is don't forget rule number one. And that's it. A lot of investors that are, Warren Buffett is the one of the main ones that's his rule. That's it. You don't use any other rules. And you got guys out here with a whole Rolodex of rules pretending they're doing something savvy, but fact is that they're just not exercising patience and diligence. That's all. If you don't have the $1 million to put in the bank to give you 10% yield to live off of $100,000 a year, just throwing out random numbers in a random scenario there, how do you attain it? How do you achieve it? How do you get to that point? I mean, does it make sense to live in a place like San Francisco or New York where if you're a millionaire, it's just like if you're a $100,000 person? It's crazy, but it's true. Right? All these things are important to understand because they are the cornerstone of laying that foundation that you want to build upon. Right? And that's kind of the thing. Everybody wants that bag, but how do you set it up so that it's perpetual? That requires understanding what an asset is, what a liability is, what value is. And, there's all these different components that come tied to it, right? And you have to battle each one to fully grasp the big picture. Anybody can lay it out for you. But until you really sit there and synthesize all those different properties, you have to figure it out. Like, I could tell you what an asset is, I could tell you what a liability is. Doesn't mean anything if you don't understand it, right? And this is the biggest catch. Like in crypto, we're all out here chasing fiat, not understanding that's actually a liability. We need to be chasing crypto and trying to find ways to balance our reality. And our reality is piss poor. And it's piss poor because we're in a state where we should constantly be trying to acquire crypto, even though it's hard to just constantly do that, especially if you're a working person with responsibilities. Everybody just doesn't have disposable income to throw into an investment, and that's the reality of 2022. I mean, somebody, Alan, actually sent me an article on Twitter today, Alan Fizime, about the stark reality of the average person that is a working person, and that is that they live check to check, right? And if you live in America, you've known that's the truth for at least 2 decades. That's not news to you. But for all of those so-called millennials or whoever, all these people born after 2000, they're just discovering this in a lot of ways because now they got to go out there and survive on their own, and it's not survivable. I mean, if you're over 35, think about what it was like when you first was 18, what the cost of living was in your area versus now, then versus now. I mean, it's wild, man. I mean, it's so ridiculous how they set the whole scam up, right? We were all waiting for real estate prices to collapse with everything that was happening. And here we get this full fledged inflation, and real estate values are shooting up, rents are shooting up with no justification whatsoever. And the only justification is just that there's more valueless fiat roaming in the system. There's nothing else going on, literally, at all. That's it. That's the only change. Property didn't change. In fact, it's actually gotten worse with time because of fair wear and tear, right? So it's like, how do you juggle these things, man? We gotta live. We gotta try to survive. We gotta, and the answer is you gotta find multiple streams of income. Period. We gotta do it. That's If you can't make it work with your one income, well, you gotta hustle, baby. And that's the nature of the beast out here in these streets. Doesn't matter if your streets are in the burbs or in the city, right? Nowadays, everybody's in the same situation, it seems. And this is why it's so important to talk about understanding that this is a long game, understanding that crypto has 0% value, relative to everything else that exists. Like, when I think about the stock market or just the legacy markets versus crypto, I think about it as follows. You got 100%, and then you got, legacy markets is 100%, right? It's like full to capacity. Crypto is less than 1%. It's so much capacity for capital in that system. And that's the way I think about it. I think that if you can wrap your head around that as a new person in this space, you're going to find nothing but success in the long term, because that's all we're trying to find. It's not about right now. It's not about the supply right now. It's not about the supply next year. It's about the long term implications of the investment decision that you're making. And that's a function of understanding the protocol, understanding the desire behind the mental acuity of people. What are they going to want? And everybody wants money for nothing. And everybody wants to be invested in this chart. Everybody wants to be in this type of chart as well. There we go. I mean, come on. This is 231x. Oh, I'm sorry. 2300x. This is 2300x from peak to trough. And this is from 1979 to today. So the low was 235, the high was 544,000. Nah, I'm not. It's just because we both from New York, so we sound the same. I realized that recently, like, we all fucking sound the same to a certain extent. So that's what the issue is there. But nah, that's my homie though. So shout out to him. But generational wealth. It doesn't happen in a year. Doesn't happen in 2 years. It doesn't happen in three. It happens over your lifetime. You teach your kids. They pick up those habits. They enhance those habits, make them their own, etc. Right? Interesting question. Let me show you guys something, because I mean, what do I mean when I say log base 2 and all that? What that means is that Hex is replicating that pattern at all times. Even when it's down, it's respecting that reality of that pattern. And I'm gonna show you guys that right now. Hold on, because I know I got a chart here that shows it better. Damn it, do I not have it here? Hold on, man. I guess we could use a stock to flow tracker. That's good enough. So, okay. Power of two values, right? This is what that's all about, right? If you don't know the values of the power of two, you're not going to really know what the hell I'm talking about. You're just going to presume that it's just some number thing or something. No, it's a process that Hex goes through in terms of how it moves. So think about it like this: the human body and how it's designed, it's a function of the golden ratio, pi, 1.618. So your digits are Fibonacci, your arms are Fibonacci, your legs are Fibonacci, your torso is Fibonacci. With respect to you, that's all. And Hex works the same way. In fact, I think I can find this. Let me see. Because this image actually shows exactly that. At least it's supposed to. If you measure, this to that, that to this, I can't remember the torso measurement, but there's all these different ways that there's a drawing somewhere. I'm not gonna find it so quickly. I didn't think this would come up in terms of how to explain it. Let's see. There we go. And there we go. So they present it in multiple facets. My internet is crazy slow today. I don't know what's going on. But here's the golden ratio. This is what I was talking about specifically. Look at your finger. It represents that, right? A, B, C, D. It shows you the replication there. And this is what I was talking about with that man image. It always kills me with that one. But yeah, all this stuff is Fibonacci, right? So this is the characteristic of how we're designed as human beings, our bodies, everybody. And if you didn't know that, now you do. Here's another image. And that's how it is, It's just zooming out versus zooming in. And it should always be the same ratio, sequence, etc. Because that's how we're designed, just like this helix, right? Our DNA structure, that's the same thing. It's a function of Fibonacci. So we're always the same, just at different scales along the journey, if that makes sense. And that's pretty much what's going on, right? So if the human body is designed like this, what am I saying with log-based power of 2 with Hex? But what I'm saying is that anytime it moves is a function of these values. That's literally all that means. So Hex can never ever not be in line with its log scale, log 2 scale, never. As long as it's moving, it's in line with it. Now, how so? Well, look at here. It's stopping at the 1024 level, or it's pausing at the 512 level, or near the 256 level. And before it's done the same thing, right? And these are the kinds of things that I mean when I say it's log based too. Like every pause, Everything that happens, it happens at these values, right? Look at the chart. Every time it happens around these values. 2048, a bunch of stuff happened there. 1024, a bunch of stuff happened there. 512, bunch of stuff happened there, right? And same thing, 256, bunch of stuff happened here, and so on and so forth. You can go to my site, check out this chart, and you'll see it. You see yourself, like, price stops. It does all these things at these points in time, and that's what I mean when I say log base 2. It's the characteristic of hex. It can't never lose it. That's like saying you're not a function of Fibonacci golden ratio. You will always be that, whether you want to be or not. That's just what it is, and that's what hex is. Hex is log base 2, whether we want it to be or not. Period. And that's just how the cookie crumbles from that perspective. Um, but yeah, so we can expound on this attainment of generational wealth, right? By again understanding what we need to do as persons, as individuals, right? And that's taking responsibility of our actions, clearing out any nuisance level debts that we have that we know we just got to get rid of it just to have a clear mind, because we can't take care of our business if we can't think straight, right? And it took me a while to figure that one out. And ever since I did, life has done nothing but improve for me. And what ends up happening after that is that when we make these decisions that are determined by money, we think that when it's a cash flow out, that we can't replace that cash flow coming in. And the fact is that you always can. This is just about you figuring out what it is that you can do to add that value to the world that will return it to you, because that's just how it works. A lot of people have a lot of good skill sets that they could deploy at any time, and they just opt not to. Like, I'm one of them. I refuse to turn a wrench ever again. I just don't want to do it anymore. I'll do it for myself, but I refuse to do it for money ever again, because it was not a positive experience like I wanted it to be. So I let it go. And that was that. And that's something I got to deal with, right? So that means I got to find other ways of making that cash, whatever that other way may be, right? And if you're in a position where you can't just buy 10 T-shares outright because a 15-year T-share costs $300, $400, and you can't get 10 because you don't got $4,000, well, that means you got to find ways to hustle that money up. It ain't going to be with your job, because your job is never supposed to produce that type of disposable income for you, unless you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you can save that kind of cash. And a lot of people just aren't, especially when rents are on average $2,000. That's $24,000 a year. $24,000 a year. So that means if you don't make at least $48,000 a year, you're paying 50% of your rent on average. Think about that. A lot of people don't make $50,000 a year. A lot of people do have to pay $2,000 on average. So this is why you now have that proliferation of multifamily housing in single family homes. In New York, you come out here, a lot of these apartments are chopped up. Apartments chopped up. How the hell does that even work? Apartments are already small enough as they are, as is, you know? So how does that make sense? Well, people make it make sense. That's how these kinds of things happen. People from out of town, they come in, they just want to be in New York, they don't give a damn. And people take advantage of that. People take advantage of that. Yeah, roommates equals more DZA. This is true, but it also equals more headaches. Yeah, rental prices are killing people. Housing prices not so much, because they can't really fake the front, fake the funk on that one. with rental prices, it's much harder to fake. It's much easier to fake the funk because, like I was just saying, you got out of towners, all these other aspects, Airbnb, all that, like all that impacts. Um, it's crazy out there, man. This is why you got to really think about the moves you're making and why you're making them. Like for some people, you know, those maxi coins, maxi the perpetuals, like they make 100% sense, and I get that. So can't knock it. But again, the point of that is for you to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day, right? But you got to understand what these instruments are, right? So that claim receipt is a claim receipt. That's what maxi and the perpetuals are. Hedron is a literal derivative where the value is strictly derived by being related to hex. So it's not like you're not getting hex for just having Hedron, right? Like there's no direct connection in that sense. So these are things that are important to understand. Now we got our own currency that's backed by hex, and that's what the maxi perpetuals are. You know, uh, that makes sense for a lot of people, and a lot of other things make sense for a lot of people. But it's about you understanding what those things are and why they make sense to you, right? Um, and that's crucial. Yeah, the middle class has been getting squeezed out of existence for at least the last 2 decades, bro. I like it's. And you know what? I'll even go back even further. I'll say as soon as that political correctness came into the fore, that's really when all the middle class really started getting screwed over in a major way. At least that's the way I saw it from my vantage point, because I wasn't in them neighborhoods living a good life. I was already, in the muck. So I got to see the downgrade that people went through. I mean, yo, for there to be no middle class, and I knew this was happening because I could see it. I wasn't living it. When you're not living it, you see these things. No factory jobs, all this stuff, like it was gone. Like you couldn't survive on one family income or one person working in the family on that type of income, and that wasn't the case before. Um, and that happens slowly over time. And if you're just busy living day to day and you think that this is just happening because it's just out of control of any, like, nah, that was all deliberate. Like, look at all the stuff that's happening in Germany. Look at all the stuff that's happening in England. Look at all the stuff that's happening in Europe across the board, or at least that side of the water. Them people are about to have a really ugly winter, whether they wanted or not, because they weren't willing to take control of their sovereignty. Like they're just letting other people determine what's gonna happen with their life. That doesn't work here like that. They gotta do it way different over here. They gotta fake it much harder. Over there they don't even fake it. They just, do whatever they're gonna do. And people just, all the politicians, until they then go riot or whatever the case is. And that's just never the solution. Unfortunately, the solution is education. You gotta be able to challenge them in their arena. That's the only way. And this is why, I had to just tell you guys in a straw man book, like, 'cause you gotta know. A lot of people aren't willing to just go find it, or they can, or they don't have the time. So this is the best way for you to get started in that direction, because now you know where you're supposed to look. Because it's like I've been saying all along, you just gotta read, but you gotta know what to read. Now you know what to read. Oh yeah, nah, we're not all millionaires. Nope. And by the time I'm done, I'm gonna be a billionaire. I ain't even worried about it. Millions is some shit that's irrelevant to me. Been there, seen that. It's irrelevant. Who cares about millions? I ain't seen billions though. So that's my concern. Everybody can do what they want though. That's what makes the market. But the most important thing to remember is that those playing the generational wealth game, they can't take losses. Think about it. If you're buying Hex at 50 cents and you're not touching it for 15 years, how bad does it really hurt that you're down 95%? When you know that by the time that you may or may not even ever have to sell that coin now, thanks to Hedron, Icosa, and Maxi, and all these other coins, now you know you might not ever have to sell that Hex. Something to think about. Because when you invest in something that is time, Hex is a clock. Every day at 8 o'clock, and we know we're going to get paid, or 0000 UTC. Like, we can run our world by a Hex time, right? Hex is a clock. We know we're going to get paid every day at 0000 UTC, no doubt. No question. You can reset your day just based on that. I mean, it's crazy. Right? Like, this inflation comes to you every day. How long are you willing to delay that gratification? That's the question, because that's the ultimate challenge, right? When you think about the greats, that's what they did. Even those guys that were traders in the game coming up in the 70s and 80s, they were holding those positions for as long as they possibly could because they understood that was the key to success. Even when I was reading these books as a schmuck that didn't know anything, I wasn't grasping that. I just thought that the market was doing it. Nah, they were doing it. They were letting the market do it, but they got to let the market do it. And that's the catch. You got to be willing to let the market do the work. That's what staking is about ultimately. Like, once people everywhere else that are not in crypto catch on to what's going on with staking, man, you guys are not going to understand these fucking numbers that are going to be put up on these boards. People are talking about 5 cent hex, man. Who gives a damn about 50 cent hex? You got all these people selling all these millions of hex. And we talk about this frequently. At one point, they were selling 9 figures worth of hex, 8 figures, 7 figures is what they down to now. It's only a matter of time before they can't sell 7 figures anymore. And then what happens? Everything changes, doesn't it? Because here's the thing. Now is when it's easy to acquire 6 figures worth of hex. What does it cost to acquire 100,000 hex? Let's find out. $40,000. 4,000. Excuse me. 4,000. Couple months rent. On average. Right? Yeah. And this is why you gotta try to dream up other hustles, bro. Like, it's hard out here, especially when you're relying on a salary. It's tough. That's why you gotta do other stuff. Like, man, go on YouTube, go on Google, go wherever you gotta go and just search. Like, nothing is gonna make sense until you start putting your mind to it. And that's how I ended up finding Hex. in a lot of ways. I was just trying to learn stuff. I wasn't even trying to find ways to make money. I was just trying to learn stuff that I didn't know. And it just so happened that at that time, I was learning the domain name system of the internet. And man, it's been real ever since. Because it's one thing to know how the internet works; it's another thing to really comprehend how it works. And that's what I was going through the motions of trying to learn at that point. Um, and it brought me here. So you just don't know where you're gonna end up when you actually take that motion in that right direction. Because that's what it's all about. It's just about moving in the right direction over time, right? This is why we harp on the t-shirt rate, because the t-shirt rate, man, is only there to do one thing. Why is it doing this? I hate when websites do what they want. There we go. Thank you. That's why we focus on the t-shirt rate only doing this, because when the t-shirt rate is understood, you realize that while you do have time, you don't have all the time in the world. You got some time, not all the time though, right? And this is what you got to really think about. Do you want to give yourself the time, or do you want to let the market determine what the time is? So yeah, you got to determine the time yourself. That's honestly the most optimal strategy, right? Because when you determine the time frame, you can't lose, because you understand how you got to adjust, how you got to move. And that's ultimately what it all boils down to. Once you figure out what your wheelhouse is, how it is that you can make money most comfortably and most sensibly to you, there is no stopping you, because you're just doing the same thing over and over and over. And that's all you got to do. And that's the hardest thing to do as a human being, because we like to do backflips, acrobatics, all this nonsensical stuff that we don't really need, right? Like, that's really the ticket of it all, right? It's the fact that once you realize that you can determine what it is that you live through, how you live through it, then everything else changes. Everything. But you got to be willing to put in that work. A lot of people aren't willing to put in that work. You got to be willing to slow down. You got to be willing to not spend. You got to be willing to pay off debts. You got to be willing to put your priorities in order, right? Like, all that stuff is hard, you know? Yeah, no doubt, right? It's always a siren or something in the background. It's crazy. Um, Now we got some old school Lil Wayne bumping. I don't know if y'all can hear that. um, Try to find every advantage that you can find. For example, speaking of HSIs, you got 10% more ICOSA when you take an HSI, make it a 55555 stake, and sell it to the ICOSA contract. You got 10% extra ICOSA. Not a bad way to go about it, right? So, you know, the long game, guys. That's really the one word answer, or the short answer for how generational wealth. You play the long game, because when you play the long game, the adjustment, it's like towing a ship, right? Or guiding a ship. When you're turning, it's slow, but you're turning, and that's all it is this whole time. You know, like everybody was investing in stocks, then they found futures or FX, then they found crypto, and now they don't even look back there no more, right? And that's like the evolution, because everybody's trying to find that thing, and that thing is that's what we want. We want that thing that's gonna make us the money. But we gotta understand that, like I've had so much money and let it slip away because I didn't understand what I was doing. I was just doing things, and that's the catch. You can't just be doing. You gotta understand what you're doing. That's the ticket, because it's easy to just be like, yeah, I own Bitcoin, but I don't know anything about how it works, and I made all this money. Like, how the hell do you plan to hold that Bitcoin when it's going down 95% when you don't know anything about it? It's almost nonsensical. You can't have any confidence in it, right? And that's just how it crumbles, man. That's how the cookie crumbles. You just can't have any confidence in it. So you got to put in some kind of work to understand the basis of what you're talking about. Um, and that's really it, right? Understanding the foundation, having your priorities in order, taking care of yourself first and foremost, because you can't take care of others if you can't take care of yourself. Um, Understanding the decisions that you're making, are they in line with your wants and desires? Like that's really like that probably should really be number one. But you got to really know again what they are, what those wants and desires are, and that comes from understanding what your why is. Why are you doing these things? Because I tell you what, man, I've been doing this thing for a long time, and it's really just like a big old fun puzzle to me, right? Let me actually take this off. To me, this whole game that I be talking about, all this stuff that nobody understands. Why do I understand it? Because I realize that that stuff is what's moving and shaking the world. It ain't nothing else. So I made it my business to learn it, and now I can share it with whoever wants to learn to. And that's really all it boils down to. It's not much of anything else. Um, so your why is everything, and I love this game. That's why, to me, I wake up and do it every day, and it just so happens that the ramifications of the decisions that I make are monetary. So that's why it's important to know all these rules that nobody really knows, because they're just gonna say anything. It's just like they said the other day. So I saw blockchain bug was asking me earlier about like World Economic Forum and all that. They're gonna lie and say whatever they gotta say to get you to act in their best interest. That's how they operate. That's called manufacturing consent, and that's how 90% of everything in this world works, if not 100%, depending on who you are and where you're at. So I think we can leave it there. Your why is really the top one. Um, your why determines what you're gonna do, because or how you're gonna do it, because they're kind of intertwined, the how and the what. Right, everything is tied together really. So this is why is really the most important thing, because it ascertains everything else. You got a question here. Um, do I think the hex price is in range so that liquidity providers make money on those fees until we have more updates? It's easy to presume that, given how markets can seem. Where is this chart? But I just think the market is just working itself out how it would otherwise. because you got so much hex coming out the system. And it's kind of like I said a few months ago when the bottom happened. We were just gonna see this happen, right? And this is just the price going sideways because there's so much hex being sold. There's all these other things going on. Everybody's waiting for Pulse Chain. People are dismayed with Pulse Chain not being released yet. All these other things going on. People. It's tough out there right now. On top of all of that too, right? So people are more inclined to sell crypto than buy it if they don't have disposable income, right? So, and more than likely, even in crypto, is going to be more often than not that people are going to have to sell even if they don't want to, because they're going to need to. And that's a function of their reality, right? Not crypto itself. So if a lot of people are in a precarious position, they're going to be selling their crypto, whether it's Hex or otherwise. So that's something to really try to wrap your head around, because the market has to digest all the supply, right? That's really the simplest way to put it. The market has to digest all the supply, and that supply is being absorbed by the people that are presently buying. So yeah, you're welcome, brother. Um, yeah, I mean, look, if Pulse Chain takes that long, man, I think people are gonna lose their minds. To be honest with you, but that would be 2 years almost, I think. Um, yeah, so I don't know. We'll see, man. Either way, I'm not scared. If it don't come out, well then so be it. I still got my Hex, and Hedron, so I'm squared away just with those two. Um, it's tough, right? Because it's software. We just gotta be patient because we got a test net. So, and the test net works just fine. Very rarely do you have any issues unless something's happening in the background. And they're working on it, so there's gonna be stuff going on in the background. Yeah, people are gonna go crazy. Yeah, that's exactly my point of view too. I do not disagree. Uh, that's really the upside. Will price reflect that for us for the long term? If that happens to be the case, I don't know. But I would want to be buying. I wouldn't want to be waiting and trying to figure out if it's a good time to buy and all that. Like, it's always a good time to buy if you got the ability to buy, right? And that's the way I would view it. Because nothing's changed with Hex. Still the same thing. Oh. Hold on, guys. Before we get off, this is really pretty important. So, there's freight trains that are being canceled now because now all of a sudden, and I guess I just wasn't paying attention. But now unions are planning to strike. Train unions. Railroad workers, and that means that cargo. A lot of our cargo in the U.S. gets transported in freight trains. So if that goes to sugar, honey, iced tea, you can only imagine what's going to happen to prices in the areas where they rely a lot on imports, whether domestic or international. So you guys prepare now. Don't wait. Be my advice to you, because whatever you can get that is non-perishable and can stand some time, get it, because the dollar is only going to get weaker. It's not going to get stronger. So, yeah. I mean, you guys got to realize when the cost of living, when you can get more with $1 in crypto than you can in the physical, quote unquote, real world, there's a problem. Major problem. So, something I needed to let you guys know. I can't believe I almost forgot. But, you know, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of people just don't understand it, to be honest with you. They think it's something that exists when it's a one-on-one. There's nothing else like it. So they can't really compare it to anything. They don't understand the structure or design, Just it's all good. But yeah, yeah, once you can't get those goods to that central point of distribution or watering hole, however you want to view it, it gets precarious, right? It gets crazy out there because you can't buy it. You can't just instantly grow it either. So you're in what's called between a rock and a hard place. And it's never fun to be there. So prepare yourself ahead of time. And it's better to be over prepared than not prepared at all. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope the stream made sense. Play the long game, understand your whys, and always be diligent, vigilant, and do your best to understand why you're making the decisions you're making, because that's going to pretty much drive everything else. That's going to be the motivator. So that's really the key. What is your freedom? What is your success? That's the key to building that long-term generational wealth. Because we all want what we want, but how do we get it and sustain it? That's by finding processes that we can just replicate. But we got to have all these other things first before we can get to that point. Because everybody isn't built to be playing the markets. People are built to do other things. I don't like sitting in a chair all day. I don't. So even me, I just understand the who, what, where, when, and whys and all that nonsense. It's not what I like to do. I'd rather be out running my ass around, just doing nothing. Just having a good old time running because I enjoy to run. Whatever. I'm just a physical person. I don't like sitting down all day. So that's not my thing, you see? So everybody's different. And you got to figure out what works for you. And that's really all it is. And you got to try to exercise it, though, You got to make it work. Because if you don't, you get left behind by your own accord. Because, again, it's like all these streamers. There's a market for everybody. Simple. Peace, guys. Right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest. Yep. That's it. Yep. That's the secret. The guy well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. These motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. I mean, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you.